Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about anger management in the Dominican Republic. Today, we are with Manuel Concepcion, Rael Cabrera, Gabriela Bernard, and I, Cesar Bonilla.
Well, we're gonna start viewing what is anger and how we can understand it to create a great view of how we as Dominicans management. So anger, we have two views, anger as a feeling and anger as an action. First, we must settle that anger is a feeling that we all feel, all human beings, animals, and it's normal to have it. It's normal to express it, to feel it for days, weeks, hours, minutes. So, anger is a feeling we need to express that it's an emotion experienced by everyone, how I say in the bullet point, in the bullet point, there is a natural and universal response. It's our response as our fight or flight feeling because when we are angry, we feel that we must protect or defend something. Sometimes that comes as a place of attacking it, which is why someone has violent actions, or the way of flight, that is the way of getting away and further from that situations that make us angry. It is also a warning signal when you get injured or someone close to you or your feelings or pride or philosophy, you get angry also. That's because it's warning you about something that is not right, that is not functioning in your brain correctly or in your life. We must say that it's a valid emotion. Is itself is not bad or wrong. It's not how some people say you can't get angry, you have to be happy or positive all the time. That's a lie. You can get angry. The first point is how you manage that anger, how you see anger as an action. We sometimes cannot control how we feel anger, but we can control how we express it, how we choose, because it's a behavioral choice. It's controllable. Some people will say, I know, I see red, I can control my anger, I explode, I get aggressive with other people, I say things I'm not meant to say. But anger as an action is ramification of some of the other action as happiness and sadness that you carry on with your childhood, your life experiences, and how you manage the problems in your life. It can be both destructive and constructive potential because it can manifest as aggressions and insults, but you can also use it to solve problems. We all have the situation that we are angry at someone or at some problem, but we focus our anger and we can manage to overcome some obstacles or make objectives in our agenda. It's not only the potential to make someone hurt, but make someone resolve your problems or you make it resolve it. So it is also measurable. It can come from mild irritation to aggressive actions. So in the next slide, we are talking about how we manage anger. The first is there is a very common misconception that implies anger management is about you how you suppress your emotion. Oh, you're angry. Suck it up. You cannot feel that way. You cannot be sad. You cannot be angry at someone. You cannot. You can. The way of management anger, you have to know how to control it. For that, we need to understand how it comes from. Our brain has two parts: the amygdala that controls the raw emotions and doesn't suppress it, and our prefrontal cortex that allow us to think logical about the things we must say. So when you're angry, your amygdala hijacks your brain and you cannot control what you say or what you do. But when you suppress that emotion, you are only trying to suppress the amygdala. You are not using your prefrontal cortex. You are not thinking logically. You are just suppressing your emotions because yes, you don't understand what to do with that feeling, with that rage. So how I put in the presentation, instead of thinking, oh, that person is trying to ruin my day, this person is bad to me, he's attacking me, he's making me hurt, he's hurting someone I like, or someone I am close with. No, you think that person is having a bad day, probably, or a series of bad days, and the culmination is what I'm seeing now. So instead of intent to attack that person, you need to attack the problem. So how you attack problems? You think logically. So that's the difference. You don't suppress, you control, you think, you try to wind up all the solutions and let your action speaks louder, not in a violent attitude, but in a measurable context. So, as in the last, a person who is a slave to their impulses will always be a victim of their own biology. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the causes of what specific things make people lose their patience, especially in the Dominican Republic. First, we all know the traffic, especially in Santo Domingo, is very, very tedious and it takes a long time to get to a place that might be very close. So, these factors, and adding another one, bad drivers who cut people off make everyone around it angry too. And when we add all of these factors together, are causes of what actually make people angry in the Dominican Republic. Another factor is the heat, especially in the summer, which makes people very irritable. Also, long lines at banks and bad customer service. These are very connected, where there are certain banks where people take a long time, a lot of minutes, even hours, to do just basic transactions. And when we couple everything that I just said about the causes, we can start to identify the causes, as I just said, of why people get angry. But this is not a justification of their anger, but just an explanation of what is the root cause of everything.
So, how do Dominicans deal with anger? That's basically asking how do human beings react with anger? Because that depends a lot on the person and how they were raised. Many Dominicans choose either two options: hacerse loco and not care about the situation, deflect the situation, knowing, hey, this person is probably crazier than me, so I'm not going to look for a problem, I'm not going to look for a confrontation. I'm going to keep myself safe and I will avoid problems. I will either keep it inside and deal with it some other time, or the other way that Dominicans or any other human being that is in an angry situation is confrontation, trying to find who is the problem, how they can deal with the problem. And usually, this confrontation mode only happens when people are in different states of mind. For example, if they're drinking, if they are overworked or have had a really emotional situation or under any drug use, they'll usually choose to confront. So it's the accumulation of so many problems that later on they decide to explode. But that's not actually what you see on a day-to-day life when problems are small, either during a traffic stop or at the bank. People won't usually start cursing. Well, yeah, that is a way that people can react, but it's not the immediate reaction because we as a society we try to be as civilized as possible. Now, if we're talking about friends and family, people that know us and that we know how they can react, the Dominican can act really differently. For example, if they're talking to their partner or their friends, they can become a little bit more confrontational because they don't have this veil um to cover. They don't have to conceal anything. They know that they can be who they want to be with that person. And it's going to be a lot easier for it to get a little bit dangerous, a little bit more drastic in the reactions that people have. So normally people in society and socially wise will choose to avoid confrontation and just back down. But if the person has been drinking, smoking, or are under any influence of drugs or lack of sleep and stress, they would go to the confrontation route.
So, to close our discussion, I want to focus on the solutions. When we talk about anger and about management, we're talking about simple habits that helps us to stay calm. For example, there are breathing exercise that can lower your heart rate. and give you a moment to think before reacting. Some people count to 10, others take a short walk, but the goal is always the same: to avoid reacting impulsive. Uh, at the end, at the end of the day, a person who practices patience lives a calmer and happier life because they don't let anger control control the situation. The next slide, please. Another important part of managing anger is empathy. When we try to understand what the other person is feeling, we respond more respectfully, more respectfully. And it's also helps to recognize our own trigger and communicate in a clear, calm way. In general, good anger, uh, good anger management improves our relationship and our everyday interactions. And honestly, we need strategies that work in our daily environment, especially here in Dominican Republic, where stress is very common. Um, if we apply these techniques, we can handle difficult situations better and live in a more peacefully way. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you everyone for listening, and goodbye.